So initially, we were talking about the fact that the truth table does not account for what the identity symbol means, and it doesn't account for um, the meaning of the atomic sentence, right? So yes, A is identical to B is an atomic sentence. So is A is larger than C. So is B is larger than C. But we think of the meaning of these sentences, right, in terms of what this identity symbol dictates. So short story is the truth table does not account for, right, what the atomic sentence means, whether it doesn't account for what the identity symbol does or how it functions, right? It's not a truth functional symbol. And it doesn't account for the meaning of larger, smaller, left of, right of, that sort of thing.
Right.
And so,
yeah, I understand now.
Yeah. And so then I think where I confused you guys was I said, well, what if we go ahead and add some connectives? What then, right? But let's just leave the animal like this so that we can see very starkly that, the truth table just can't account for this. And so, if we were to use the truth table, it would be the wrong test. So think about it this way. If you want to test your blood pressure, a thermometer is not going to do it. It's the wrong test, right? If you want to test your temperature using a cuff, a blood pressure cuff is the wrong test. So all we're doing here with the truth table is saying that we've got a really robust test as long as we're employing it in the right environment. That is, we're employing it with sentences that have at least one connective. What do we think? Is that pretty okay?
Yeah, makes sense now.
Okay, now before thinking about what's coming next, so do you guys, are you comfortable with saying, okay, I get that the truth table doesn't work to exhibit, right, that this argument is valid, but I know that if I build this animal in Tursky's world, there's no way that I'm going to be able to falsify what I'm calling is the conclusion, right? So if A is identical to B, come on, and A is larger than C, it follows that B is larger than C. What's not going to happen right? So I've got the sentence A is identical to B coming out true. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Oh well, might as well work them all. A is identical to B comes out true. A is larger than C comes out true. And when we've got this visual on the board, we see that we can't. There's no way for us to falsify sentence 3, right? So I know that just by examining the meaning of the predicates, by understanding what the function of the identity symbol is, I cannot falsify the conclusion. And then finally, if I go over to Fitch, and I ask if the thing is an analytical consequence, right? I basically, what Fitch is doing here is it's building a world. right? To test whether or not the inference is an analytical consequence. What do we think? Does that make some sense?
Yeah. So an analytical consequence actually takes into account what the thing means, whereas a tautological equivalent, at least in Fitch, like it doesn't necessarily.
Correct. Yeah. The truth table is a tool that we use to determine possible truth values of sentences involving connectives. And if we don't have a sentence involving a connective, sorry, rephrase, if let's say we have an argument, right, consisting of multiple sentences, we're not going to necessarily get what we expect. If we know the thing is valid, we are likely to show on the truth table a different outcome.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. So think about what we're doing in chapter 4 is seeing the ways in which we can use a truth table to determine values, right? So truth is a function in the truth table of atomic sentences and the connectives that operate on them. More specifically, the meanings of the connectives. So truth is an operation truth is the result of performing an operation, right? And so that is a really powerful tool in that context. And we're going to spend in chapter 6 and then again in chapter 8 our time talking about, demonstrating valid arguments by way of rules that rely on these truth definitions. Okay, so if we let's pop back in really quickly to our second exam. Remember, you can download it, you can open it inline, right? I hope that you feel, and we'll revisit this on Thursday, but that we'll definitely move into chapter 6. Does it make sense that you're going to use bool to translate? So you're not working in ordinary English, you're going to use your symbolic logic notation. And then you're going to take the self-same set of sentences now in symbolic logic notation, and you're going to construct a truth table, you're going to evaluate. Then you move on to other evaluations where you're just inputting sentences, right? So here's a single sentence, here are 2 sentences. So you use the relevant evaluation tools. And then finally, so bool for part 1 and 2. And then for part 3, you may end up using Tarski's world if you find that a sentence is always true in Tarski's world, even if it's not a tautology. That is, it's not true by way of a truth table. So what I recommend is this before we meet on Thursday is to make sure that that we've gone over stuff so we know what sorts of questions we want to ask. But I'm sorry, Deb, what are you thinking?
I was wondering for the first question that you had, the validity question, do we have to also answer the contradictory question?
Great question. No. I mean, you can if you want to, but I'm not looking for that.
Okay.
Jeremy, what are you thinking?
When we open up this test, is there a time limit on it similar to the quizzes, or no, as long as we turn it in by Sunday or whatever day it's due?
Right. Great question. So yeah, so when you work your quizzes, yes, you're timed. The exam has no set time for completion apart from the window in which it's open and then it closes. And the thinking on the closing is that I want to see how you guys are doing, and then depending on how that goes, you might say, oh good, I don't have to I don't want to rewrite the exam. Or you might say, you know, I want to rewrite the exam. I want to retest the exam more specifically, in which case you can access your retest. What I did do, I don't think I'm misspeaking when I say that I make the exam to window. Well, actually, let me check on this. Let me see if I'm wrong. I don't want to give you bad information. Some things are sort of jumbled up in my thinking, so okay. So, yeah. So, I mean, here's the problem as far as I'm concerned. While you can access this up until the last day of exam week, to the best of my knowledge, that the college hasn't changed exam week. And so I'm treating all classes now as if we were under regular online exam circumstances where, you know, during exam week, you can access an exam all week long. So June 8th is a Monday, and that's the last day of final exams. So you can access it until then, right? You don't have to complete it. I do ask you to complete it by Sunday, this coming Sunday. But the downside about waiting until June 8th is that if it doesn't go well, then you don't have time for the retest. It's probably more than you wanted to know, right?
So Mia,
Yeah.
in regards to the e-exams and quizzes, are those similar in terms of the due date, but we have until like the completion, like until June? Because I'm looking at the actual like the availability of everything.
Yeah,
So
Jeremy.
I mean, I'm going to try to do them on, you know, obviously on time. But
Right.
I just want to know our option.
Right. So here's part of my thinking. So here, actually, let's go to assignments real quick. Yeah. So part of my thinking. So you see your due date, right? So the due date follows what our current schedule says, but the availability, as you can see, is extended. So here's what I'm thinking. I don't know what's going on in your lives. I don't know what sort of pressures you're under, and you know, and what I don't want to do is, you know, kind of say you're locked out, right? You guys have been, you're responsible, you're dedicated, you are diligent. I'm not worried about you putting stuff off. I figure if you don't complete something, you have a good reason for it, you'll complete it as soon as you can. Right? So during this time where things are tricky for us all, right, in some sense, I'm very happy to just say, let's not worry about certain demands. Obviously, our semester is going to end, but, you know. What do we think? So far, so good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Now, we're a minute over our time, but before we leave, I just want to give you, can everybody see Walter? I can't see it because I turned my machine. See, now everybody gets a little Walter. I want everybody to be as relaxed as Walter is, lying on my day bed in my office. Okay. All right, guys. I've got another class coming up, but I will be around. So if you have any questions, problems, confusions before we meet up again, don't hesitate to let me know, okay?
One last question, Mia.
Yeah.
So when we open up the exam 2 that you just showed us earlier, that's something we can open and close, right?
You can open it, and it's not like there's any timer that starts.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, of course.
I'll be turning in my e-exam later too. Like I just was waiting for our classes to restart, so I'm gonna send them in today.
Sure. Okay, yeah, and again, I mean, do work at a schedule that makes sense for what you've got going on in your lives, and I'll just keep cycling through stuff as I see it. Of course, I got to still look at your e-exam 1, so I haven't done that, but okay.
All right, sounds good.
All right, guys.
Professor, have a good day.
Thanks, guys. You too. Bye.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Fun.